What's up, people? Your ever-faithful producer here, James, letting you know that you are about to hear part 2 of the special Black Panther edition of the Off Color podcast. If you haven't listened to part 1 that just went up this past Monday, I would go back to that since we circle back to a lot of that stuff here in the second part. And also be advised that there are a lot of spoilers in here. We have this conversation from the perspective of assuming the audience has seen the film. And if you haven't seen the film, you need to go do it. What are you waiting for? Without further ado, part 2 of the Black Panther edition of Off Color podcast. As always, your host, Rebecca Henderson, Dr. Gregory Diggs, and our 2 special guests, H-Soul and Maria Nagawa. Here it goes.
I want to hear your point that you got going here.
Well, I only wanted to speak a little bit about this idea because before the break we were talking about this idea of like the finale of the film, right? The UN piece where it's like, okay, so this quote Black Miss Leadership class is going to the UN and they're going to do it a certain kind of way because we're operating within the systems and structures that are already in place.
Right.
Which we are, I think, all of us kind of are arguing that this shit is no good and we need to dismantle the whole thing.
Right.
But since we are questioning whether or not that's possible, except for H-Soul, who's all about, he says we could do it in 3 years or 6 months or whatever you're trying to say that we could do it. I don't know because I would like to see that happen. Right. I'm with you.
Right.
However, I don't really think that it's going to happen, unfortunately, right? So it brought a lot of stuff up for me as a person who considers myself, like I said, I consider myself a conscious person. I consider myself a woke person. I feel like when you're black and white in America, there is no way that I'm not like born woke, right? That's just the way it is. So when Maria and I were having a conversation about some work I did for like an NGO in Guatemala, and I felt very firmly like I was doing the right thing by working with this organization. Because this organization, I'm not going to say their name and stuff because, whatever. But I feel like they're working in a way that I think is acceptable. Where they go down there with the idea that we're going to let the people lead what they want to do. And that's what I did. I'm a librarian. Everybody know that. But I went down there. All I did was say, hey, this is what we do in Denver at the public library. And now their little library where they didn't do anything, they didn't have internet, they weren't really doing anything down there. Now they have classes, they're having chess tournaments, they have story time, they do all these things. I didn't do any of that shit. I literally showed them my website. And that was it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I sampled a story time. So in my mind, I feel like I did the right thing. Like I went down there for 6 weeks. I showed them some stuff. They liked it. They did it. They took it. They ran with it. It is going on and on and on every day. So in my mind, that's a good thing. Maria brought up the point where she was like, yeah, I'm not feeling this so much. And I took offense to that. I did. Okay? I took offense to it. I was like, no, I'm good. I'm one of the good ones. And all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, this is how white people feel when I'm telling them they're a bunch of racists and stuff. Right? They're like, no, I'm good. And I was like, no, I'm good. And that was a hard truth for me to swallow.
Yeah.
That was really hard for me to swallow.
Great job, Maria. You're a pattern disruptor yourself. You had to interrupt that bullshit. Right. That's good.
But like the white people who are still crying at their house, right? I'm still like that because in the back of my mind, I know the people that I connected with, right? I know that I'm not a typical American, right? I'm going down there, hablo español, estoy conectando con la gente. Like I'm doing what I'm doing there. And so I'm still in my mind, I'm like, I still feel like I did something good and I don't feel like I need a pat on the back for it, but I feel like, I did something good.
But you do understand that those aid agencies are ran and manipulated by the CIA, right? You do know that. So there's a book called Economic Hitman, and I suggest that if you ever think of getting back into that field again, or if you ever want to look at how aid works, and I don't know if that's the position that Maria was coming from, But I suspect, coming from a place of Uganda, she has she has an analysis of what aid, what I like to call the Sally Field effect, right? Okay. Where it's a bestowing of resources upon the poor, people that we've been pillaging their natural resources from. But I think what's dangerous, and I don't know what Maria's point was with that, is that it sets it up in your mind that you are doing something good, and it removes your ability to step back and see the fuller picture that you are actually furthering the process of imperialism and this paternalism that he was talking about earlier, where Americans come and bestow technology on resources onto the poor Guatemalans who actually, if they were left alone, would have every fucking thing that they needed. And if we left their economics alone, if we left their social systems alone, they would be a free and independent, thriving Wakanda. But because we're not allowing them to do that, we refuse to let them have their own economic system. We will kill them and murder their leaders if they talk anything about socialism or communism. But what we will do is we will send down aid workers to further them in Americanism and seeing us and keeping that relationship of I will bestow to you, which is exactly what happened at the end of the movie. Okay,
that will bestow it upon you. So in my mind, where I'm at is I didn't feel like I bestowed anything on them. I was just like, look at this. And they were like, ooh, that's cool.
So it wouldn't have made a difference if you hadn't gone.
And I appreciate that question. And I think you are right. No, it did make a difference that I went. It did make a difference.
That's the crux of the problem. So for me, this is it. A few years ago, I'm trying to get back my accent. A few years ago, I used to go to this bar in Kampala called Bubbles. It's still there. O'Leary's pub. It's an Irish pub, and I know like people will be shocked. Kampala has an Irish pub. No way. Anyway,
Irish people love to drink. I don't feel like that's shocking.
I mean, Irish pubs are like McDonald's or something, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so this Irish pub, of course, the bouncer is a Ugandan man. The manager is white. Everyone who walks in this Irish pub is black, except the manager, who is also a figurehead because the owner is also, I think she was a white woman or something. Anyway, I loved this pub. I love this bar because everyone knew me. They treated me great. I love this bar because I could go get drunk in this bar and I'd be fine because all the bartenders knew me by name, etc. There was a lady, an acquaintance of mine, who was bounced from this pub because she didn't look like she should be in this bar.
What does that mean? She didn't look like she should be in there.
They had their rules or whatever. And the black bouncers were like, no, you can't enter this bar. Because maybe the way she's dressed or whatever else is going on. So when she talks about this issue, I'm like, man, you guys, I like this bar.
Right.
Because everyone in this bar treats me great. And I feel good in this bar. And I know the thing is that sometimes I go to this bar and I don't know anyone. But I know the bartenders and I can talk to them and it feels great. And, whatever. This girl got bounced. I don't know what happened. And she was bounced by a black person anyway. And I continued to go to this bar for a long time, and I was like, I dismissed this. I was like, yeah, it's a problem, but this is my place. This is my joint.
You didn't want anybody to steal your joy.
But guess what? I was a part of the problem and had to acknowledge that later. And I didn't go and say, hey, I'm a shitty person all of a sudden, and everything I thought about myself has been like blown to pieces, blah, 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 blah. I'm still who I am. I went to this bar and I learned from that experience, from my refusal to acknowledge that she wasn't accepted as a black woman, not dressed the right way, whatever that way was supposed to be. But it didn't tear my being apart.
Right.
And in fact, I look back to this moment and I remind myself to be humble. Because I'm like, even now, I may be defending a position, but 5 years from now, I might say, hey, that wasn't like necessarily correct.
And that's why I loved this conversation though, because for me, it felt like I was like, okay, I have to be more patient when I'm working with and leading conversations around race with white people in America. Like, I have to be more patient because it's not going to happen in 1 minute. It's not going to happen in 1 hour. It's not going to happen in 10 days. And God, I hope it doesn't take 10 years.
But what I'm saying is that you are part of this, and you can bring that story to the table, and we can discuss it and say, hey, this is what we find problematic with that issue. And if you also see a problem with that experience you had, if you also suddenly turn around and say, hey, that wasn't like correct, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that everything you believed in suddenly, it's torn to
So my
shreds.
question, I guess,
But
and
you
right
can
now
grow as a person.
is-
It means you're human.
Yeah, but in that regard, I guess I'm just thinking like, why is it that when we have that conversation, that's something that affects me, that I can continue to have a conversation with you, whereas when I have a conversation about race with white people, they start like crying and shit, and then we can't go on. And I feel like we are gonna have this debate for a long time.
They've been coddled for generations.
Yes.
They've been in their baby baskets or whatever. Everyone has told them how good and incredible and smart and blah, 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 blah they are.
It's a
and
crashing
so when
of their paradigm.
suddenly someone tells them no, they're like, what?
So
I can't believe it.
Let's take a step back, because I think her story has something that's pretty interesting to this conversation. I just want to ask you, what would you have thought of the woman that got kicked out, and she declared her agency, and she began to picket the place that you went to?
The bar. Yeah.
The bar. What would do you think that would have been an acceptable action, or do you think, would that? If she would have claimed agency and say, listen, I'm not just going to take this in silence. I want to let other people...
She's actually the kind of woman who didn't take this in silence.
Right. No, so I'm asking you, what would you have thought? Would you have thought that she was trying to steal your joy?
Good point.
So,
I think,
no, go ahead. So that's why I want us to be very clear about when we're talking about engaging and claiming agency and us me raising my voice. I'm not trying to steal anybody's joy, right? That's not my aim. My aim is to claim my own agency in being an oppressed black man in the United States. And if by me speaking my truth, right, it kills your joy, then your joy must not be really settled on any firm foundation. And if that woman... right, would have somehow stolen your joy because of a disservice and injustice that was happening to her, you would have turned around, and I'm not saying you, I'm saying you may have turned around to her and said, listen, I love this bar, you trying to steal my joy up in here, and then that shuts down the systemic. Because what she experienced was a systemic injustice. It wasn't personally against her. It was the whole, and I've been in bars like what you're talking about, because they have them in Ghana. They got Irish bars in the middle of Ghana, full of black people, white owner, black bouncer, white manager. I've been there. I know exactly what you're talking about. And that is part of a systemic issue in Africa. Right? And so I just want us to be very clear, right, to bring this home to ourselves around what we call Killmonger when he shows up. What are we going to do with Killmonger when he shows up? When I'm telling the story of systematic violence and what swallowing this movie Black Panther whole, what it will do to us as a people. Don't kill the messenger, right? Because you don't like the message.
Well, I'm now listening, and I am struggling with this now, and it's new to me. But I'm going to tell you that, there are situations that kill my joy, and that our joy sometimes should be killed. Okay? Because I'm going to tell you, living here in Stapleton, I've done this example before, but when I had to talk to my 10-year-old son when he was 10 and inform him, have the talk with him, and talk to him about how, people do get killed. For just walking around.
That's right.
My joy was killed.
And so was his.
And so was his.
Yes.
And it had to happen.
It had to happen.
Because
sometimes,
right, because life depends on that. And so I'm now struggling in my mind.
But this is, Greg, and I hear what you're saying, and let me help you with that struggle. You did that for the same reason that I do what I do. You kill the joy in your son because you love him.
And he has to survive.
And you want him to survive. And I say what I say, and I kill Joy because I love my people.
Right.
It's done out of a space of love. But what black people are used to are people killing their damn Joy who ain't got no love for black people. And so we conflate the two. Right? Because we're used to having our Joy killed. And so when I kill Joy, you're like, oh, you just like the white man killing my... No, but I'm not just like the white man because I'm not in a position of power.
I love you.
And I love you.
Right.
I'm telling you this because I love you, not because I want to kill your joy. I want you to be free. And in order to be free, we have to be as clear as possible at all times, even when... Which is one of the reasons why I'm glad that I no longer drink. Because I drink in order to numb my senses. That's why you can get... In Africa, you can get the most powerful alcohol. I never had... Listen, y'all don't have alcohol like they got in Africa. I sat down with Nigerians. If you sit at a table and drink with Nigerians, and you see she's laughing, right? Because she knows the truth of what I'm talking. You don't have alcohol like they have in Africa. You can have... They got Purple Label of Johnny Walker in Africa abundantly, Black Label abundantly, all the strongest drinks, cigarettes unfiltered. Because they want those people who are sitting on the resources of the world to be numb. And so the same reality exists for African Americans here. They have to numb the ex-slave. They have to numb us as slaves. Because if we're not numb, then we become aware of where we are pained and where we are hurting, and that is when we rebel. That's why you find liquor stores on every corner in the hood, and you can't drive out to Cherry Creek, and you have to drive 4 or 5 miles out of your cul-de-sac in order to find a liquor store. So I'm saying that we have to be clear the systemic issues that are taking place, and that this movie represents for us as black people, as oppressed people, and tell our children the truth. We have to tell our children the truth.
Yeah.
Which we will, hopefully.
Well, we are going to tell our children the truth, I think. I feel like White James over here tries to tell his children the truth every day. Right or wrong?
Right, I try.
Okay.
Sure.
No, my little one is little for it, but he be he's into what he's into. I'm actually drunk right now, so it's problematic because H-Soul is kind of touching me in my soul, where I'm like, shit, I think about that stuff a lot because I do like my drinks and so on and so forth.
Oh, I'm not telling you not to drink, sister. I hope you're not hearing that.
I'm not, because I'm
drink responsibly.
I'm literally drinking it right
And I don't know if you're sponsored by Johnny Walker. Listen, Johnny, I'm not saying.
Not yet.
We are open to any sponsorship.
I'm not trying to mess up your game. I'm just saying that we have to understand everything in its global, cultural, systemic context.
I know. And you know what it is, though? I think that then at the end of the day, though, what for me it comes down to is I'm like, man, what a bummer. Like really, though, that's really... No, and that's okay. Yeah. But I feel like it's like the thing you're thinking, too. You're like, I'm feeling like a little bit conflicted because I have been really looking forward to this film. Obviously. Yeah. My ensemble.
The hype. Yeah, I get it.
Right? The hype, the excitement, just the beauty of it, and just what I thought it was representing. But at the end of the day, I mean...
It's Hollywood.
It's Hollywood.
It's a movie.
But we knew that before we went into it. And so
I don't think we always think about it. Deeply.
And that's... We don't. Again, let's not play like let's not get here and play. This is the biggest movie. It's on the front of Newsweek. It's on the front of New York. They have articles coming out, and they are setting, white supremacy is setting this movie up. We have to ask ourselves why. Because we don't control Newsweek. We don't control New York Times. We don't control Cisco and Ebert. We don't control Hollywood. Why is Hollywood setting this movie up for black people this way? We have to act. Why were you so hyped?
Right. If they're selling the Kool-Aid, you got to be like...
If they're selling... Listen, there's an African proverb that says, if a man is offering you a hat, look at the hat that he is wearing.
Oh.
That's an African proverb. If he's offering you a hat, look at the hat that he is wearing. And there's nowhere that's more evident in this movie. The hat that the people who are making this movie are wearing is a capitalist hat. It's a patriarchal hat. It's a paternalistic hat. It's a hat of white supremacy. And that is who.
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, because this is something that White James brought up, was this idea
why
of looking at it.
White James?
You know why? Because he asked me to.
Right.
Okay. Oh, my bad.
White James, your question was. I forgot. I don't know. It was good. It was about the patriarchy.
She about to blame that.
Can I say something?
No,
Can I say something?
Wait, stop.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Like, the thing is that I don't think that... Honestly, I've given up on expecting too much. And maybe that's the problem. Is that I don't expect too much. Because I've been disappointed by Nelson Mandela, by Barack Obama, by Gandhi. I've just been disappointed by this man. Gandhi was a racist. Nelson Mandela sold out his people economically. Barack Obama bombed
Africa,
Libya and sent... Like, the number of troops that increased in Africa increased in Barack Obama's time. And he invested $1 trillion in nuclear weapons.
That's right.
So the thing is that I'm kind of like, So,
it's
like,
funny,
when I go to see
because I
this
said
movie,
that earlier, right? And I said that I heard that in you. I heard that there's a little bit of...
Well, let her finish.
So when I go to see this movie, I'm not like, my life is going to change all of a sudden because I've seen Black Panther. It's not.
She's like,
but I can
who's
take
gonna
some
fuck up?
entertainment value.
Right.
And at the same time, yes, I do, because, and maybe it's because my arrogance as an African woman, but I think that people need representation, because I have grown up in a land where everyone is black, from the president to the street
To the bus
beggar.
driver.
They are black. And I can go and talk about my history. I know my ancestors. So I can't speak for black people who haven't had that experience.
Wow.
And if they value that experience, then I'm like, yes, value your experience. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to be there and say, hey, these are the things that I know. These are the things that I understand about the world. I will say it, but I will not say, I'll take it from you. You decide what you want to do with it. But I will give you what I know of the world.
Okay.
So here's a good question for you, though, from that perspective. Are you speaking, and I'm speaking in Black Panther terms, are you speaking as a Wakandan? Or are you speaking as one of the black people who did not have accesses to resources, education? Are you speaking, basically I'm asking, are you speaking as a black elitist?
By the way, I'm definitely in the elite. My mother, I don't know, my dad, I think he was pretty privileged. My mother had to struggle, but she got into the elite class. And for sure, we are in the 10% of Ugandans. We are in the 10%. And I recognize that. And I think it's important to recognize that and say, I am in the 10%. But I shouldn't be 10%. I shouldn't walk down the street and other people are not like me. For me, that's my problem.
Right.
I can't stand it. That's why I couldn't stand Rio, because I was like, I won't be in this land where like every other black person is like oppressed. Almost every black person in Rio was oppressed. In Uganda, I'm guilty. And I can't stand that. And so I want to change that. And not just for myself, but even when I go to Rio, I want that to change. But I know that I can't do that by myself. And I know that it's going to take time.
So would you change it as Killmonger, or would you change it as T'Challa?
I don't have to subscribe to any.
I agree that, but I'm saying, which one did you identify more with?
So let me think. I don't know if I identified with either one. Because what's his name? T'Challa comes from a royal line, blah, blah, kings, etc., which I don't know about. And Killmonger comes from the US, and he comes here with... But I do believe in the redistribution of resources. I think companies, like I told you, companies should pay their taxes. They should pay fair wages. People should get their benefits. And in Africa... there should be payment for the resources that are taken, if they are taken. So, I don't know if I stand with some particular ideology, but what I believe in is that we shouldn't... No, I don't believe in hoarding resources. Because when I drive down... if I was rich, if I was a trillion, gazillion, whatever, and I drove down the street, I wouldn't be trying to be in a bulletproof car.
Right.
I would want to drive down the street like, hey, chill, hang out.
So then you're
with people.
Killmonger. So let's be very clear. See, that's why I wanted you to place yourself because
But I don't want to kill everybody else to get
he didn't
there.
want to kill everybody else.
But he did.
No, that's what they thought of him.
Stop it.
That's not what he thought of himself. He never said I wanted to kill everybody. And that's the problem. That's the problem with the movie, right? Because now we think that Killmonger wanted to kill everybody.
No, he didn't want to kill everybody, but he was firmly entrenched in this idea that he was going to use the tools of the oppressors to be like them.
No,
he wanted
that's
to have,
what they put on him. He never had that perception
he
about
said,
himself.
I want to rule the world and Wakanda will be on top when I'm the king forever. And as Maria pointed out to me, that's what he did when he burned down those flowers and shit.
No, he was stopping himself from being assassinated. That was what that was about. He wasn't trying. He's not eternal.
I didn't think about that.
He didn't know that he was eternal. What he was saying is
dictator.
No, what he was saying is, listen, I'm burning this because you're not going to assassinate me and put someone else in my place because I know y'all don't like me. I know y'all don't like me. Nobody in this kingdom likes me.
So wait,
H-Soul, if you're recognizing these themes in the movie, then you can't be totally 100% against it because they put these other messages in the movie.
No, what I'm saying is that they put the message in there, but at the end of the day, this is the bad guy. So anybody who thinks like that is a bad guy.
But
so
I
this
feel
is
like the movie didn't show him as the bad guy. Like at
you just got finished saying that he wanted to kill everybody.
Hey, listen.
That's what reminded me of Trump.
Yes, and that's
the idea
not
of the guy who wants to burn down the entire establishment around him to make sure that his illegitimate
because his real message was he wanted to liberate.
That's what's his real message. What she's talking about is what the black misleadership said about him.
Well, no,
that's not what he said about himself.
Well,
what he said he wants to get weapons
Actually, though, I'm going to say it went both ways because remember when he challenged T'Challa, he was like, "I'm going to kill anybody who would even think about
like you. I'm gonna kill anybody like you and your children."
Right. So
but that's what black misleadership is. Black misleadership is
I'm not arguing that, but I'm just saying that he was going to kill some motherfuckers.
Yes, but listen, people were being killed anyway.
I agree.
Right.
I agree.
So let's get out of the idea that this is a Disney movie and he was about to go past.
But it was literally a Disney movie.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
I'm just saying it's not a dichotomy. It's not a right or what I loved about the movie was it was complicated. It was complicated. It wasn't an either or.
So the question is though, who was speaking as Killmonger, being somebody that was there's a voice that is telling that story.
I agree.
And there's a voice that is portraying Killmonger that way.
I agree.
That's Hollywood's voice telling that story.
This is what I think, regardless of what you think of Killmonger or T'Challa. From what I've learned of my African experience and our African heroes is that, man, you should have your own mind. Think for yourself. Think through the facts. And then choose your path. So whether is it the Killmongers and T'Challas and everything in between and outside will always exist. But as an individual, who are you? And I think that's why education is important, is bringing the facts to people.
Right.
And encouraging them to be critical thinkers. Because I don't think that I'm not like...
You said you were for the redistribution of wealth.
Yes.
Was Wakanda for the redistribution of wealth or was Killmonger for the redistribution of wealth?
Killmonger.
But
okay, so hold on.
Wakanda then at the end though they did
No.
say
See, and that's why we have to pay attention. That's right. No, I'm saying let's be clear of what was happening at the end. What Wakanda did is said, listen, we will be the imperialists now.
Right.
We will be the imperialists. We will determine that Oakland needs this. You didn't see them go to a Oakland city meeting and with the people of Oakland because those little kids on the playground had parents. They didn't sit down with an adult, and you never saw an adult Oakland person. All you saw were children. But those children got parents, and they could have sat down with the parents and said, "Listen, what do you need in this community? But they did exactly what white people do, white supremacy does, is they go down to Guatemala, they go down to Ghana, they go to Uganda, and they say, listen, this is what you need.
Right.
But because I think that's what the director was taught in his own life.
Yes.
Right. No, but that's the point.
That's my point.
The point.
That's my point. The director is coming from a particular political framework, and we have to dissect that, analyze it, and either reject it or accept it. But we are just accepting it because it's a film where there's some shea butter, there's some drums, there's some hippie, popping.
But I'm going to push back on that. I don't think the dichotomy is acceptance or rejection. I think the opportunity is discussion.
But from discussion, we have to make a choice.
Not
just sitting around talking, right? That's what my sister's saying. We can bump our gums on it, but sooner or later we have to do something.
This is what I'm talking about. You said a choice.
Yes.
Yeah. I think there may be many choices.
Yes.
We can make.
Right.
I think we need to discuss it. We need to debate it.
Yes.
We need to argue.
Yes.
Shit, we need to fight.
Yes.
I don't give a fuck.
We
need to fight.
Right.
And then make choice.
That's what I mean.
Make choices.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
And make choices.
Yes. But that's the point of the movie. The point of the movie was to lay out what what choice we should make.
I know, and that's what your point is.
That's my point.
I'm not.
And black people are walking.
I'm not disputing
out
that.
like, yo.
But my thing is that we and because of you and because of other people, when we go to the movie, we're not limited to the choices that people intend.
Yes and no. So because I'm in media. If you put an underlay behind the screen that says drink Coke, 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 and 20 minutes into it, you're about to get up and go get something from the stand, what are you going to drink?
Coke.
What are you going to choose? You're going to drink a Coke. And I'm saying that's what was done. You do understand that.
I do understand it, but let me play with you.
And America did that.
No.
And they
I'm with you,
yes.
but let me play with you. This is what amuses me, right? Because there's sometimes unintended consequences of that
I agree.
stuff, right?
And America's full of that,
because
right?
my joke is, and I can go back and do a historical thing on it, but my joke is, come Halloween,
when you say that white kids are going to be dressed up in T'Challa suits, that's not a contradiction. That's not a contradiction. So even as an unintended consequence, that's not a contradiction because T'Challa represents white interest anyway. Now, if they dress up...
But I wasn't going there.
Okay, if they dress up as T'Challa...
No, I wasn't going to T'Challa. I was thinking the unintended consequences, people are going to show up as Killmonger.
And if that happens...
And listen...
And you're right. But you know what? They had to create the movie, though. And they had to create a judgment.
No.
And you're right.
No,
there's
I know what the
intention.
I'm not arguing about the intention.
I agree.
I'm just saying, there's unintended consequences that are natural, and then don't let people like
you're
me
be leveraging.
You
read Black Panther. How dope would it have been, and what would it have cost Hollywood to make T'Challa and Killmonger to leave that movie as brothers and creating that? What would it have cost Hollywood to do that?
And they
could have been the CIA that was the issue. Because that's the truth, right?
They're not ready.
Yes, and that's all I want us to acknowledge is that there's some endings that they did.
But what I'm saying,
they can because they're putting the whole American system in question. But they are not going to do that in a Hollywood movie.
Yes. But do you think, Maria, for me and you, because in I cried also.
So we should make our own movie.
Right.
Well,
and that's the point of having this discussion. Because when we can understand that there's shit inside of this candy, then we can say, wait a minute, why don't we start making our own damn movies? Because I like this movie. It was great. I put on some shea butter and a head wrap, but there's some boo-boo up underneath here.
But you're saying,
let's make our own movies.
But what you're also saying, though, is that the reason we don't is because we can't. Because these things have to be financed by...
And so then that's where
So why isn't Oprah making movies?
Oprah makes tons of movies. Are you being facetious?
She's got one coming out.
Yeah, about what?
About Oprah's movies?
About Oprah.
Oh, no, don't. Yeah.
No, me and the sister, I know on the podcast it's going to come off like but I really reverberate with her positioning that she's taking on a lot of these issues. You will meet very few black people who will make a critical analysis of Nelson Mandela. Very few.
Oh, Maria will break some shit down. I'm just saying, Maria. Maria has checked me repeatedly on positions of like the United States President Barack Obama, whom I love, not just because he's black, but because he's half black, right? So I got all kinds of extra feelings about him.
Special flavor for you.
Okay? No, but it's true.
But also, the reason I have extra feelings is because his dad is from Kenya. Like, if like some white person had done what he did,
yes,
I'd be like,
we would have peeped it.
That's what they're going to do. But Barack,
he was you know what they called Barack? They called him the more effective evil. And that's what this movie is. This movie is a more effective evil. Because if it was just white folks playing this out, we would have peeped it so much easier. But because it's black people taking on white people's politics, we miss what the real message is that's being sent to us. Woo. And that's why this movie is so dangerous for black people to consume without having an analysis, without critically thinking. And no, it's not taking away your black. If asking you to think is taking away your black joy, we're in trouble.
Okay, it's like there was a study that was done that looked at they looked at how many black people supported the invasion of Iraq, and very, very few. To nothing. But how many black people supported the invasion of, like, the excursions in Syria and whatnot and Libya? Many more black people supported that.
I didn't know that.
So I think that is the problem, is that we become the face of oppression. And oppression becomes more acceptable. So how do we stop to become the face of oppression? And I think that's a critical issue.
So,
wow.
So now let's talk about what
James had a thought. You guys, I saw it in his eye.
I still desperately, I want to hear Maria speak about very, very early in this discussion, Maria started talking about patriarchy and about male leadership throughout history and male sort of heroes. And I'm wondering about talking about the film in light of patriarchy, because it is a very patriarchal film. And I haven't heard a lot of talk around that. There's the female character who's a warrior, and she is tough and she's awesome and everybody likes her, and she's a great character. Yeah, and she's great. But
she's serving a king, a male.
But also she's close to being it.
I think that's a legacy of like Christianity, colonization. I mean, I don't want to presume too much about what existed before colonization, but I like to tell this story. When my grandfather was a very unique man because he got married at 43. He was born in 1900, got married at 43, had one wife. Unique for his people, his time. But the other thing is, when we were remembering my grandmother, her friend came and said, your grandmother was a wonderful woman. They're all Christians. She did not take on this like backward habit of sleeping with other men to have children from other men. She had children from one man. And when I asked about it, when I inquired about it, I learned that women in that culture would have children with other men to secure like the offspring, to make sure that the offspring had no defects, because they believed if they had a child with one man, their offspring would have like certain problems. So they had children with more than one man. But that showed me that there wasn't just polygamy, there was polyandry. And it was acceptable.
Oh man, I wish I could have some polyandry.
So for me, there are so many things that have been distorted throughout our history. And that's what I keep saying, that one of colonization, one of its things was to take away your sense of identity. And I told you earlier that the first successful C-section was in Uganda. which is in Uganda.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, a white man witnessed a successful C-section, and it was in Uganda.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And people used to have premature kids, and they would survive.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't need to have a skyscraper for that to happen.
Oh.
And so that was taken away from people. So there are many things that have been taken away from people. And so what can we say of societies that existed pre-colonization? And I also told you that the whole thing of women guarding the king came from a West African tribe.
Say more about that.
So
I think she's talking about Yasantua.
was it Yasantua?
I think that was because that Yasantua took up the arms against the British but she wasn't guarding the king. She was fighting against the British.
I think it was Benin, but I don't want to be 100% sure, where the king had a female royal guard.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, why they took that from.
Yes, the imagery from
and
it.
Libya, also Gaddafi had that. He had a
Oh,
female
really?
royal guard.
Wow.
Yes.
See?
So I think that one of the elements of colonization is to take away your identity, your sense of self-worth. So anything that gives you a sense of self-worth is taken from you, and you are told you are worthless, and everything that is good about you comes from outside. So that is why I say aid is problematic. Not because they're stealing resources from Africa, but they're reminding people who are in this position of oppression that they are worthless and they have nothing to offer.
Wow. You can't. Ooh.
There's no argument for that. Okay? My brain start crying and shit. Oh my God.
I feel like picking up one of these mics and just dropping it.
Because Maria knows what's up. Okay?
Wow.
Maria knows what's up.
That was beautifully stated. Beautifully stated about aid. Beautifully stated about
No,
aid.
and that just to tie it to this idea, because part of our podcast is Off Color is to be able to have people be able to talk about race. And it's this idea, though, where you can critique the system and not the individual. And I think, and Greg's making a face over here, but
because Greg says that systems are made up of individuals.
Right.
No, okay, no, and that's legit.
Have you guys seen this?
During
Like,
the war, if no
ultimately
soldiers
comes-
show up.
That's
Yes,
right.
right.
like a cartoon.
But if you can,
It's like a cartoon where they show I don't remember. I saw this years ago. It's like monkeys. Like over time, they come up with some sort of system that makes them getting the mangoes like easier. And then the monkeys that follow, they don't understand why it's like that, but they just keep doing it. They just keep doing it repeatedly, and I think that's what happens. Systems are created, and people just keep doing it. They learn the catchphrases.
It's normal. It's normalized. It's regular.
Let's do that.
Right.
But they
It's
don't know
normalized
why.
for the masses, but it's not normal. The people who control the system are very clear
Right.
that the monkeys are doing that, right? And don't think that the monkeys that made this movie aren't clear of what systems they are reinforcing for the masses of monkeys to continue to.
I really don't think that they are. Like Kendrick Lamar, honestly. Like, I'm like, damn, Kendrick Lamar. I want Kendrick Lamar to exist, by the way, and I'm like down with that shit. But like that he goes and performs for like a football like game. I'm like, come on, Kendrick Lamar, don't do it. Don't perform for a football game. You know why this is problematic. Oh, this director. Like he doesn't know why the UN is problematic. I'm pretty sure he doesn't know.
He doesn't.
I'm pretty sure. And
This
that's
is
why
it as
he
an
needs to be
opportunity.
educated
Yes.
as well.
Just like Beyonce and Jay-Z weren't clear on. Listen, Nigerian people would when I lived there would hire Jay-Z, kings who are hoarding millions of dollars. In a very poor country would hire Jay-Z and Beyonce to come and perform for one day, fly them on so this whole thing about Africans being poor is bullshit. There's masses of Africans are poor, but there's some Africans, the Wakandans, that are extremely wealthy.
I sent you that video from that woman from Sierra Leone talking about them giving up their wealth to receive handouts. On
Really?
that TEDx talk. And I also sent you that article about Africa is not poor, we're just stealing.
we will post both of those things on Off Colors on our Twitter feed, which is Off Color Pod on Twitter, and Off Color Podcast.
The problem that I have with movies, like Black Panther is that there's this idea that it should be developed into something. They should make a skyscraper. They should make wireless technology.
That's what development is.
Because that's what white people have done, right?
Yes.
So also Africans who are happy living under a tree should have done.
Yes.
But we never had winters.
Yes.
We never had summers. We never had crazy weather and if we did, we'd have done something about it. If the necessity arose, we would have done something about it. Would have gone out there and interacted with other people. But we're living in a land where
it was good.
That wasn't necessary.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point.
No,
and you know, when they put that in that movie, it continues to undermine us and our intelligence, to portray us as backward.
But it's just this idea, though, again, for modeling for white people, that, like, my feelings are a little bit hurt right now, right? Where I'm like, ooh, I did this good thing and I did that good thing and I like the movie and I'm this and I'm that, but I'm not willing to shut down this conversation because my feelings are a little bit hurt.
Yeah, but not all white people are like that.
Look at my boo-boo.
That's not all white people like that. Listen,
Of course not all white people are like that.
I wouldn't even say most. I wouldn't even say most. And I think it's important. I think that's a very important idea for us to understand that I think right now, more than any point in time, we have more potential for white allies. We have more the potential for white accomplices because white people are starting to get hit to the fact that this system, fuck it, it's not working for us neither.
Exactly.
Right? Which is how they got sold on it anyway. So the notion that white people don't want to have a discussion around race and they get all in their feelings. Listen, they don't get no more in their feelings than when you talk about Obama to black people.
Oh, shit.
Right? So let's be very clear. You go to some people's house and start talking about Obama, you looking for a fight. You go and talk.
Maria came in my house like,
now I'm down with H-Soul.
Yeah.
I've watched the bridge across this table.
So we can't. So black people can't get on no higher and holier than thou. White people don't want to talk about race. Well, black people don't want to talk about class. We won't hold up Oprah Winfrey, who lives in Chicago, one of the most violent, one of the most poor, and she went over to Africa and built a $50 million school.
And she could have given housing finance to how many black people here in the U.S.?
How many could she have given them to even in South Africa? That school that she built listen. The school that Oprah Winfrey built in South Africa was for the next elite. Only 250 girls attend a $50 million school in Africa. She could have rebuilt the whole infrastructure of villages as far as the eye could see with $50 million. But what she did is she made sure that the next elite, the next Wakanda would exist in South Africa where diamonds are, where gold is, where copper is, so that those children that come out of there would take on and be the next Wakandans that hold on to resources and dole them out to the rest of the poor Africans as they see fit.
So what I hope, I'm loving this, and what I hope that people are hearing, one thing that's resonating with me is we actually need to be getting in our feelings.
Ain't that what we tell white people?
That's the
growth happens in the discomfort zone.
We need to be in our feelings.
Right.
If we're not talking about this stuff and we're not in our feelings, we ain't that shit ain't.
Greg, go onto my Facebook page and see what black people are saying about. People are making videos. Sarah's still in Black Joy, but then these are the same black folks that want to go to Cherry Creek or want to hop on the interwebs and talk about what white people need to. That growth happens. And out of their comfort zones, but they don't want to deal with the discomfort of a movie.
We all need to be.
We all need to get uncomfortable.
Right. That's why we need, if we're going to defeat a common enemy, we need to cooperate across the board. Within our communities, our neighborhoods.
Yes.
As black people, fuck the white people. If they want to join, they can join.
Yes.
And across the diaspora.
Yes.
Okay, the diaspora.
So she brought up what? That she just landed on Pan-Africanism.
Okay,
Who said they want to talk about that?
I wanted to talk about it because a friend of mine, I like to say she's my friend, we're just friends on Twitter, but her name is Tananarive Dew, and she's a professor, she's a writer, she's an Afrofuturist, she's a queen, And that was a question I asked of her was like, what should we talk about when we talk about Black Panther? Mm-hmm. And that was something that she brought up. And for me, it was personal, this idea of like the diaspora, the idea of us seeing ourselves, because you're from Uganda, you're an African woman. But for me, even though, you know, my racial identity is fluid, I do identify as Black. Mm-hmm. And this idea of seeing ourselves as like strangers in America, and this idea of, I don't know, I just think there's a lot of stuff there to think about for Black Americans.
What does she want us to think about though?
Just this discussion of like, what should we do with the diaspora? And I feel like that's something we kind of talked a little bit about with like Cuba, and then, you know, my husband is half Jamaican and I'm mixed race, and you've been living in Africa, and we have a lot of stuff going on. And I feel like, and we had Theo E.J. Wilson on our podcast, a couple weeks ago or whatever, episode. Who can say? It doesn't matter.
We'll dub it in here.
Yeah, I know we won't.
Episode 5? Does that sound right?
5, 6.
Okay, it doesn't matter, but the point is that was something that he brought up, and that is something. Listen, every episode, amen. So that's something that I have been thinking about a lot for myself. You know, this idea of like, where do I fit in this? You know, because I keep asking you. I ask Maria every day. I'm like, can I come to Wakanda? Like, I'm serious. I've been asking that question. I'm like, well, what about people like me who are mixed race? Like, are we allowed to come?
Allowed
but
where?
Also, that's the thing that I was
Africa?
trying to tell you is that you are misled about the identities in Africa. Mm-hmm. You think that the identity is only what you see in front of you,
right.
But there's all shades of people in Africa. For good and bad reasons.
Mm-hmm. So, right? I think it's important for us to understand that Pan-Africanism is not an African idea developed by African people on the continent. Mm-hmm. Pan-Africanism was an idea born by African Americans because Africans at that point were so tribalized. If you ask this sister right now, what you can't say, she says that everybody in Uganda is Black, but what tribe does the president come from?
I know what tribe it comes from.
Right? So there are divisions that exist in Africa through tribalism that we have to that we as Black Americans, that was one of the beauty and one of the scars of what happened to us.
This is something I want to tell African Americans and you. Like, when you say Africa, I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? I want to go to Africa. Yeah. Where do you want to go? At the very least, you should know that Uganda exists, Tanzania exists, Ghana exists, South Africa exists, Tunisia exists.
I'm not going to South Africa. I don't like it there.
I know. Don't go anywhere in Southern Africa. Don't go. No, you'd be white, but don't go anywhere in Southern Africa.
Would I be white?
Fuck it.
You guys, I'd be white. But no, they said my hair too curly.
But the thing is that you should know Africa as it is, contemporary Africa at the very least. Because you say you want to go there. So know something about the place you want to go to.
There's something you said to me, though, that touched me in my heart, and I don't even know if you know you said it. But you said, I wish that these African countries would get their shit together so we could all
That's
come
my dream.
home.
That's my utopia.
So that's the Wakanda.
Like,
that's the Wakanda, though, where we could all come home.
Come on, all Black people come back home.
Pan-Africanism is not that coming home, right? Pan-Africanism is
utopia.
establishing home wherever Black people are, because the truth of the matter is Black people are a global people. We were a global people before white colonizers. We were here in the Americas before we were brought here in chains. We were down in Australia. If you look at what the Australians looked like before we are a global people. So we don't have to go anywhere to be African. We are African wherever we are.
And so, great.
But this is what, and I'm coming. This is what happens to Black Americans. We have been ripped, as Sister said, of our culture and identity, that we think we have to go somewhere to be African. Wow. We think that we have to put on a head wrap or slay ourselves with shea butter in order to be African, not understanding that we are a global people. Africa is not something that Africa is not some place you go. Africa is something that you are, that you were born as, that is your birthright. And so we need to be very clear that one of the biggest travesties that are happening with black people in the diaspora, and this is specifically to Ghana. Ghana has 47 slave dungeons out of the 52 slave dungeons that exist on the whole continent. That means that Ghana was the slave trading capital of Africa. That means 9 out of every 10 African Americans that you see in the diaspora came through Ghana. They came through the doors of Ghana. So this is the point. So the Ghanaian tourism is fueled by this mystical idea that African people in the diaspora, in order to reclaim something, have to go back to Africa in order to reclaim it. And the truth of the matter is we only have to reclaim it where we sit and where we stand right now.
But to that statement, I know you're not going to agree, but I don't care, is that I feel like Black Panther is part of that idea of reclaiming that, of being a Black Panther in America, of reclaiming it.
So here's the thing, and I'm glad you mentioned that. This is the problem and this is what missed a lot of people in the movie. If you looked on the wall of Killmonger's father, there were 2 posters on the wall.
Public Enemy.
And what was the other one?
Huey Newton.
And this is why I said they set it in Oakland for a reason. This is why we can't afford it to look at the movie and be like, oh, it's just fantasy. The movie's just a movie. No, it's not just a movie. They were sending messages that man who was in that apartment, the uncle, had adopted the ideas of the Black Panther Party, had the head of the Black Panther Party, and his brother, his own brother, annihilated him, killed him, because he was seeking to do the same thing that the son was seeking to do. And that is that black elitism, that is that black misleadership class that did not want to share the ideas and the wealth because they were afraid of losing their own and all of that. And what I'm saying is that's, again, the messages. If we miss the messages, and 9 out of every 10 black people that went and saw that movie would not have understood the message behind why Public Enemy was on that wall. Why of all rap groups was Public Enemy on that man's wall? Because Public Enemy is the one that's put out the song Fight the Power. You can't trust it. 911 is a joke. They took Public Enemy was the most lethal rap group in the history of hip hop, which is why they created Boys in the Hood and NWA. NWA was created specifically to kill the popularity of Public Enemy. That is why NWA was created. Wow. We were saying that we were proud of each other as of black people. We had a black fist. We were wearing African medallions. We had become black. We had become Killmonger. So what did they do? They created niggas with attitudes, put on the same uniforms but a different consciousness that we're going to kill each other. And that's, if we're not clear with the messages that movie is sending to us, we are doomed to adopt them, consume them, and repeat them.
And here's part of the doom and we have these long-standing institutions like the NAACP, like the Urban League, and I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, so we have these black Greek organizations.
A5.
And here's a problem. Here's a problem.
Yes.
Because we are elite.
Yes.
And we do not we stand on this idea that we're about promoting equity for our people. But we're not actually about that. We're not actually about that.
That's right.
And that's part of the problem that we're discussing.
Yes.
Matter of fact, I'm going to take liberty to say in this moment that these black elite organizations are Wakanda.
Yes.
That's what they are. And it's problematic.
Yes.
It's problem. And we beat our chests. We all proud. We act like we were. But if you talk to the people are not into
any of the grassroots.
Any of that.
Y'all, it's one thing. Y'all expected to hear from me.
I know.
But when Dr. Diggs starts talking like that, y'all in fucking trouble. Right? Y'all in fucking trouble.
Maybe
That's
next
funny.
Obama will talk like that.
Right.
He will measure everything he says.
Can I ask you, Dr. Diggs, do you think, now you were a fan of the comics, right?
Yeah.
My understanding is in the comics, Killmonger is from Harlem. Do you think that there's something that reflects on what Soul's saying about Oakland being a very intentional choice in the film?
I think there's some intentionality to it. I'm not sure what the full extent of the conspiracy is, But I do think, so when we talk about systems, all right, that means something, right? It means that there's some thought and organization to how things get produced or approved and promoted and released, all right? So I'm not the total conspiracy theorist, but it is not an accident, right, that Oakland and actually it's actually even easy. Oakland, birthplace of the Black Panthers. Sure. So that's like easy. That's like easy. And it's actually kind of interesting because the masses don't even know that.
That's right.
The masses don't even know that.
That's right.
And that's why H-Soul is talking about it's subliminal, because if you don't know, you won't even get what just happened to you.
That's right. You won't.
It's like a Jedi mind trick. It's like a Jedi mind trick. And you won't even get it unless you already know something.
Maria, did you know that the Black Panthers were born in Oakland?
I didn't know that.
Well, and why would you know?
Right.
You know? Why would you?
Or why would you look for the poster on the wall, which is not a very clear thing to see, of Huey P. Newton sitting on the chair? It's subliminal messaging, right? It's subliminal messaging. And that's what we have to understand, that Hollywood is masterful at creating messaging that passes the conscious mind and moves into the subconscious mind. And that's why we have to dissect and analyze the movie. That's why we have to kill people's joy.
You're killing my joy.
But I think we can still have joy.
No, you can still have it.
Oh.
You can still have it because you understand the messaging.
That's true. That's
right?
True. That's
so
true.
because you understand the messaging, you can say, listen, that's bullshit. Listen, I thought the movie was beautifully made. It's a beautifully made
Should get an
movie.
Oscar.
Oscar so black. Oscar so black.
Oscar so black.
So right, and people are gonna be hyped about that, right? And if white people don't confer upon us that black movie that was something, then we're gonna be all in our feelings again.
Right.
We're like,
Do you think at least Kendrick will finally win a Grammy?
White James!
But I'm not
Wait a minute! White James got jokes and shit!
no, that's real talk.
Damn!
That's real talk.
That's real talk. It's real talk. White James has important things to say.
Has Kendrick Lamar kissed the ring to the degree that now that you've done this, you've helped Black America swallow this pill? Can we now confer upon him an award that signifies that yes, you have done you have done the right thing.
God damn.
I never want a black person to ever have to ask a white person for anything. Ever.
Beautiful.
And that's why I said I wish Africa could be that place where black people could be like, I'm going back.
I'm
Because
going to Africa.
I want them to have the
right
option.
now.
Not because I'm saying that they should, but I want them to have the option so that they can say, fuck you. I don't need this shit.
But that's assuming to do that, we would have to say that America belongs to the colonizer. And it doesn't. It doesn't.
Are black people willing to stand by
We
Native
built this
Americans?
motherfucker. Listen, if we
Wait,
don't...
stop, stand by.
Are
You need to
black
answer
people
that question.
willing to stand by Native Americans?
Listen, the largest rebellion that has ever taken place in this country against this system happened by the Seminole Nation. Seminole was between black people and indigenous people. So in fact, it is not only will they, it's when we have caused the most damage to this system. And so people who understand their history will know that it is imperative that black people, and Dr. Diggs can testify to this, whenever I talk about black people, I always put a slash and I put indigenous right behind it, because it is indicative of saying that in our liberation is intimately and ultimately tied up to the people who were the caretakers of this land.
Woo! Woo!
And I hope that every black person gets that message.
Well, it's not hard. Most black people walk. That's not too difficult a message for us, because a lot of black people walk around and be like, "Yo, I got Indian in my blood," right? Because that's something that's right.
We're talking about Sinead Ross, episode 2.
Right?
Episode 2.
So I'm saying it's not difficult. Oppressed people. Listen, the reason why The reason why Fred Hampton was murdered at the tender age of 22 was because he was able to get black people, indigenous people, and here's the key, this is what caused his demise, poor white Appalachians to unite with each other in a political platform to the degree that it threatened the system. He had a class analysis that allowed him to threaten the system. It wasn't, listen, one of my favorite comics, Patrice O'Neal, says, whenever black folks run around here talking about black power, black, he gonna be all right. Malcolm X was fine when he was saying that the white man was a devil. When he came into trouble was when he started talking about, I'm a Muslim and I saw white men as my brothers. Martin Luther King was fine and he stayed alive and he was just okay when he was in the South and he was working for black people's liberation and black people going into schools. They killed Martin Luther King when he decided to create the Poor People's Campaign that cut across racial lines and dealt with class. So black people have to adopt a class analysis and not just be caught up on this black, Africa, black. We can be proud of it. But if we want to liberate ourselves, we're going to have to identify what Killmonger identified in the movie, which is why he was murdered in the movie, just like Malcolm X was murdered in the movie when he came to that realization, just like Martin Luther King was murdered when he came to that realization, that we have to liberate all people who are oppressed.
And I hope that we can all go to Brazil sometime.
Brazil is beautiful.
And Ecuador. And Bolivia. And
Yes.
Peru.
Okay, so this is
Nicaragua. Yes.
Venga. But I have to question this because I feel like, and maybe some of you can answer this question for me, because I feel like class is often trotted out by white people when they don't want to acknowledge racism. And that is something I really struggle with, because I don't disagree that there's no class issues. Come on, my daddy, I'm descended from a coal miner from West Virginia, okay? I know about some class, okay? But I just feel like there's,
You're absolutely right. Just like black people bring out race when they don't want to talk about class. Right. Just like we talk about Oprah Winfrey like she's down with us and she's not. Just like we talk about Bob Johnson, the head of BET, being down with us and he's not. Just like we want to talk about Obama being down with black folks and he's not. So if we want white people to acknowledge class and the limit and not use it as we got to understand that we can't trot out race and make it the I'm down for Obama because he's black. Listen, Greg knows damn well that most black people support Obama. They don't even give a fuck what his politics are. It's only because he's a reflection of them in skin tone. But yet we want white people to have a conversation and be clear and be this holy. Listen, we all have work to do here. So I agree with what you're saying. We can't let white folks off with the hook because they try to do that shit. The Bernie Sanders crew, like, oh, it's really a class issue. Nah, fuck that. There are people. Bernie Sanders didn't like black folks. He had a problem with it. He had a problem with addressing black people. So let's not make Bernie Sanders the second coming of Jesus Christ. Right. He had a clear black issue.
He's not saving black people.
He ain't saving black people. He's from
Vermont.
Don't
tell Killer Mike, you guys.
Right? He's from Vermont, so he didn't have that much dealing with black
people. And even the black folks in Vermont
said, nah, Bernie don't like that. Bernie ain't eating no fried chicken with us on Sundays. Fuck that.
It's not just Bernie. I mean, that's what Bernie Sanders and Paul Ryan and Rand Paul all agreed. Yeah. Oh, if we fix the economy, we don't have to talk about race anymore.
And he said that.
Bernie
Sanders
people
said
will say that to you at cocktail parties.
Bernie Sanders made the statement that black people should not receive reparations.
Right.
That was a Bernie Sanders statement.
Rude, because even only being half black, I still want my reparations.
If I could
vote,
I would too. He was, yes, absolutely. I'm just saying that he was problematic. And we should acknowledge that he was problematic.
But at least our conversation would be at a different level.
It would be at a much different level.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you guys, but I just feel like addressing this mulatta joke that just happened right now.
You can't.
What?
I can't.
Stop to bring in a joke that was.
Why not?
The timing's over.
I know my rights.
It's not the timing.
Reclaim your rights, girl.
I'm taking my rights. I'm reclaiming my time. I was like, I get half the the reparations, and then White James was like, but you got to give half back.
That's funny.
That stings. Yeah. That stings.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I feel that mentioning a flaw in someone's character is supposedly fatal. It is not fatal.
It's not.
You just go, you have to just take responsibility for who you are, what has happened in your past, and who you want to be. Just take responsibility. And I think I feel like in my personal life, when I have done that, life has become so much easier. You're like, take responsibility. I fucked up. Yeah. I fucked up.
And the word
my family fucked up. Right. That's okay.
So it's
now how do I take responsibility?
That's true. But it's hard for people to do that who are already told and bred to think that they are fuck ups.
Yeah.
Right? That's so you're coming from a position of having a certain amount of respect for yourself and a certain amount of confidence.
Yeah.
Yes. But if you are born inside of a system that tells you you're nothing but a fuck up, and you hit on it earlier, right? If you never are heard or shown that you are anything but a fuck up, right? If you are shown in a movie in 2018 that even though that you graduated from Annapolis and then got a degree from Princeton and you're still talking Ebonics, when in fact you are a super highly intelligent individual that didn't have to speak in broken language and what's going down? Fuck you. Come on, man. You went to Annapolis. You have a law degree from an Ivy League school. That's not how you would talk. You would talk like the Du Bois. But Hollywood, this is why they said, Jay-Z said, no matter where you get in this American system, you're still considered a nigga. And that's the way that they look at us and Hollywood looks at us, even though that they gave the character a degree from Annapolis and a degree from Princeton.
Right.
You're still a nigga.
You're still a nigga.
Right.
And we're going to treat you in your language and how you talk and how you behave like a nigga from Oakland.
What do you call a black man who's president of the United States?
Right.
Nigga.
That's right. And then we do it to ourselves, and then we're going to ignore that. Are we going to ignore that message when we see the movie? No, we're not going to do that.
I still think
some are though. That's what you're.
You guys,
that's my
I
point.
still
Most
think
will.
that I'm having this conversation. Oh, you got an accent. I'm having this conversation in the United States, and to have this conversation with a mixed group in other places that have been, like France and Brazil. Okay, just France and Brazil. But I think Brazil reflects quite a bit of South America. I think that this would have been much more difficult.
Can we talk about why, though?
Let me hear what you have to say about
The reason why, if we can have this conversation in the United States, is because black people in the United States have been at the leading forefront of justice for black people globally, which is why Pan-Africanism was born here. So it's not because America's magically delicious that we somehow are having this conversation in America. We're having this conversation in America because of Harriet Tubman, of the Malcolm X's, of the Martin Luther Kings, of the Sojourner Truths.
So have you read Frantz Fanon?
Frantz Fanon. We're having this conversation because of the Frantz Fanons, yes.
Have you read Frantz Fanon? Frantz Fanon said that there was a clear, like in the U.S., they said, hey, we are having segregation.
Yes.
And that made people stand up to segregation.
Yes.
But in countries like where I lived in Brazil and France, they didn't have official segregation. So people were like, oh, we don't have to stand up to anything.
Yes.
And I should say that I guess one of my surprises coming here was that I didn't expect American liberals to be where the French and Brazilians are. Because now I think that Americans have learned the trick is that you don't have to segregate.
That's right.
You have to fuck up the mind.
That's right. That's right.
Oh,
that's why there was no civil rights movement.
That's right.
Can I speak on like an emotional tip right now? Seriously?
That's absolutely
right. So one of the reasons that Maria and I became friends, one was she stood up for me in a public environment that really touched me. Okay. And the other reason, though, is I feel like I'm gonna cry and shit. Oh no, man!
Let it out.
Cry.
I got the camera
because she's so beautiful, and she doesn't have she doesn't have that feeling that she's not enough.
Right.
That there's something wrong with her. And that's what I've grown up with, like, my whole
right.
life. Mm-hmm. And to see someone who can be this, like, black queen and just be like, I'm beautiful.
Yes.
And I'm fantastic. And I never thought anything different is so fucking amazing.
Right.
And I'm so glad that I know you.
Right.
And thank you. I'm so sorry. I'm like crying as shit. But it's real because how many people do you know like
That's a great
here?
touching moment, right? But what you're talking about is exactly the pain that was looked inside of the movie on Killmonger being an issue. What you're talking about is that exact pain that Africans in the movie were looking at Killmonger like, oh, you've taken on the anger of your oppressor. No, I just was never told I was shit. Y'all been over here in fucking Wakanda living it up, and he told him that. Y'all been over here balling out and shit. Right. And I've been in fucking East Oakland getting fucked up, told I ain't shit, ain't told I'm smart, told her, my daddy was killed when I was 11, so you know what the fuck happened to me.
And he's like,
hood.
I know what we got.
I know
and
what
we're gonna leverage what we got for the emancipation of the diaspora.
And that's
and
they're like, oh, you're taking on wait. But it's because of this that she's feeling right here. Right. And this is what we have to this is why these dialogues are important, is because sisters like Rebecca, who have grown up in a system told that she's not shit, told that her that she doesn't come from shit, that her people ain't shit, and that has been internalized, right, by us. And that's the pain that we see in that young brother inside of the movie, and that's why we have to embrace Killmonger, right? We have to embrace him because he is us. He is us. And he is that pain of being told that he ain't shit. So yeah, he has a little swag on him. Yes, he has a little fuck the world on him.
I identify with that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna do a Greg Diggs moment here because I'm telling you, I know some stuff about H-Soul. I know some stuff about myself. I know some stuff about Theo Wilson. And I'm not saying this is the end all be all, but when you go to a historically black college, from day one, you get socialized to that shit.
That's right.
On the regular. Yes. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so it's like there are these lenses that we have.
That we are the motherfucking bomb.
Right. And we didn't know. But here's how it goes. Yes. We didn't know. I'm not going to put this on everybody, but a lot of us didn't know we were the motherfucking bomb. Right.
When we showed up.
But then we got socialized to the fact that we're the motherfucking bomb, and we're going to do an African-centered sort of approach to things. And that doesn't mean that everybody subscribes to all of that.
Right.
Because I'm going to tell you, I'm one of those Carlton Banks dudes.
Right.
I can, do it a different kind of way. But I'm telling you. And I'm listening. I recognize... right? When people are conscious. And some of the consciousness is not accidental. It is intentional. And so I'm not saying that everybody's got to go to a HBCU and to be down and this and that, but I'm telling you, when H-Soul talks, and I'm not sure everybody always agrees, Theo Wilson or myself, and like Matt, I'm doing that as a triangle because it's not like we all absolutely agree on everything, but I'm like, when people start talking, I'm like, yeah, I know where I'm like.
Right. No, but as you're saying this, it's like breaking my heart because I remember sitting in New York City with my sister, and she said to me, we think you should go to Hampton, which is like my family's legacy, and that, because she felt like I needed to go to a historic black college. No, but I'm saying, and the reason that I didn't go was because I thought that if I went to that school, I wanted to be like a movie star. And I felt like if I went to Hampton, I wasn't going to be a fucking movie star.
Wow.
And that's
part of the system, though.
Well, no, that's because she didn't choose Howard.
The
real HU, baby. The real HU.
Do not let Bootsy, my cousin, hear you talking shit.
That's fine. We can listen. I got receipts. Felicia Rashad, P. Diddy. Where you want to go? Listen, but I hear what you're saying.
He got receipts.
No, but I
I hear what you're saying. That's the stigma that's placed with it, right? That's the stigma that if you go to a historically black college, that you will not. And listen, lots of black people do that. Greg could tell you. Lots of black people will say, "Listen, I don't want my son to go to a HBCU because I don't want him to be stigmatized. I want him to be able to get a job when he comes out because So that's on par. That's that. But
it breaks my heart. Do you know what I'm saying though?
Listen,
like it breaks my heart to know that even at 17 years old, I was like, I cannot be stigmatized by this black college if I want to fucking succeed. And that shit makes me sick.
And that's Wakandan thinking. Which is why we got to talk about it.
That's right.
That's Wakandan thinking.
Come to Wakanda University.
Yes. Yes.
Or not Wakanda University.
Right.
Come to
Oakland U.
Oakland U.
Come to Oakland U.
Yeah,
right. So, and that's the thing about it, right? And but you know what was dope about the movie, and I don't want us to miss this, is that Killmonger was not the only one with that consciousness in the movie. There was another person in that movie that had that consciousness, but yet they weren't given the highlight of that consciousness. Yes, that's right.
Nakia.
She was out fighting. And they never showed her like that, and that's unfortunate. But her consciousness was the same as Killmonger, which is, listen, I can't stay here. T'Challa was like, oh, stay here with me out of love. She's like, listen, fool.
I love you,
our
but
people
I'm
are suffering.
Right.
And so I'm going to go back out and fight on behalf. The beginning of the movie shows her liberating women on the African continent who have been captured and was about to be sold into slavery, which is one of the biggest issues on the African continent today, is what happens to black women.
And she's like, you come up in here fucking up my shit.
You messing up my shit. I'm over here liberating, homie. What you doing? But his mentality, which is again something that he was so selfish that he wanted her to come in and be his wife
for a ceremony.
So that instead of staying out and liberating, and that's the black misleadership class. That's the male patriarchal black misleadership class, thinking that everything has to serve its limited Wakanda interest. And so again, he asked a question earlier, right? What do we do with the patriarchy that's in here in this movie, right? And that's a perfect example of that patriarchy, is that while even those of us who are calling ourselves Killmonger, we're not really even talking about the sister in the movie who represented that same type of consciousness. Right, and yes, at the end, maybe she capitulated, but or negotiated.
Well, negotiated.
Right, she negotiated. Like, okay, if I'm a marry you, then at the least you're gonna have to open up a damn center, right? And he came to her with that, right?
right.
If I'm going to keep you, boo, I'm gonna have to stop being a self.
Thank you. Wait a minute. Thank you for saving my fucking life.
Yes, first there.
right. And then you saved my life. And I want you with me. I'm gonna make a little concession.
So is the key to African liberation and poor people's liberation black women telling black men that in order for you to get with me, you have to be about the liberation of our people?
So I'm going to answer,
because if it's a
so my quick answer is yes.
Yes.
But I think it's even deeper than that. I think it's even deeper than that. Because part of what's going on with our black men is that we, in America anyway, is that they are socialized to some white, mainstream, masculine, hyper-masculine ideals that we need to work on discarding.
Dismantling
it. Dismantling.
Which is, I think, what his point was, right?
Yeah.
Is that...
Can I ask something? I think sometimes that the reason why black men feel compelled to adhere to this hyper toxic masculine ideal is because of how much they are oppressed.
That's right.
I know.
Because if they were not so oppressed, they wouldn't have to stand for something.
Yes.
You know?
Right.
They would be free and be like, I can do whatever the hell I want. It doesn't take away any bit of my identity.
Right.
But because their identity is so limited.
Yes.
Then they have to stand for this limited.
Which is why we're so hyped about going to see this movie.
Well, Well,
it's the same reason why we're hyped about going to see this movie.
Right.
Because it's so much has been taken away from us that you give us a little morsel. We know the morsel's poison. We know who created the movie. We're so desperate for it.
Because the morsel.
But she's not, because you and you heard, and this is the same thing that she was saying, that she felt this sense of pride on her that drew her to Sister Marie, right? And that's because Sister Marie wasn't raised in a system that was not self-affirming. She was raised in a self-affirming system, and that creates a different human being, which is why I took my children off of this continent and raised them on a continent where their identity would be affirmed. Right, but now this movie's big with people who have not had their identity affirmed, and so we are desperate.
And what you're saying is the problem is we're looking to the movie to affirm
us. And my sister Marie's rolling in there like, yo,
it's Maria. Her name is Maria.
Sister Maria's rolling into the movie like, yo, I'm not expecting this to get. I'm the shit with or without this movie
because she's been raised in a certain way, right?
But black people in America are looking like, oh, this is don't kill my joy.
Finally, yeah.
No, that is so. H-Soul. I feel like I walked into this podcast tonight thinking like, oh, I'm gonna have to be like, H-Soul. But what you just said there. I'm sorry, man.
And you called H-Soul a radical. So I thought,
radical shit.
What is he gonna say? Oh my God, he's gonna say some crazy shit. He hates Africa or something.
He's Killmonger.
He's Killmonger.
He is. But like that's the thing is like I feel like breaking it down like that where it is. It's like this idea that we just don't have the foundation that you have.
That's right.
You almost don't even notice it.
And by the way, I don't blame you for not having that foundation.
Right.
And I think that if I have the privilege that I have, it's because I am meant to try to do something towards that, not for you, but especially for where I come from. I'm supposed to do something about that. And that's why I'm like, if you have the privilege you have, you're supposed to do something about that. And that's because we are in the situation we're in.
I know, and I feel like that's when our last episode 7 with Kimberly Ming, she kind of was like alluding to this idea of like when you see the God in someone, when you see that in you. And I feel like that's the thing. That's why I do what I do, because I do feel extremely privileged, like being half black and half white and looking the way that I look and having the money that I have. And I married my incognito husband and I made my little white baby who's going to be like the secret weapon, you know? But I feel like...
Not now, because you just told everybody.
Roy Harvard Jr. said that. He was like, in Wakanda, everybody knows that he's like, because there's no secrets in black families. Right. Like, know who's the superhero, okay? And Kingston is it, right? That's my boy. But I feel like I have that feeling too, where I feel very strongly about speaking out, where I feel very strongly about using my privilege for what I think is good. And maybe what I think is good isn't always going to be the best thing, right?
But it is what it is.
But it is what it is, and it do what it do, as Dr. Diggs likes to say.
And that's why that guy... he has to be the voice, whatever box in his circle.
That's right.
Where there's like no black people.
Absolutely.
No, and that's the thing. It's like I feel like as we're trying to move forward and make this world better for our children and our future children, you know, that's part of it. Because for me, I'm raising my son a certain way, and Maria, I know that you're concerned that your baby might come out totally white.
No, she's not.
That's what you say.
She's not concerned at all.
I declare.
She's not concerned at all.
But I do have to say.
You ain't got to worry about that.
That I just
mean,
I know, but I'm just saying.
I saw that baby.
You saw that baby. You saw that baby, that half-black baby.
Take a biology class. It ain't even going down.
No, but you can't. But that's the thing. That's the thing, though. That's
the mother spirits will listen to my prayer.
Damn.
Okay. So I feel like I prayed that my baby was not going to be born with red hair, and that baby came out red hair and blue eyes.
You said you didn't think about it.
No,
you just knew it was gonna be. You thought you was about to give birth to Idris Elba. You were tripping, first of all, because you were tripping.
It's true.
So
I'm not going to deny that.
She was looking in the mirror thinking she's looking at Cicely Tyson, but
I know. I'm the Tan Tigress, baby. Tan Tigress. Available.
And second of all, my baby's going to be raised in like Uganda with a son. 24/7 every day of the week. All the days of the year. They're going to be tan. And then maybe they'll come here, like maybe in the winter.
It's just this idea, that you can, raise a child to be what you want.
Look at your baby. Look at your
baby. It is complicated.
Look at your baby. The fact that your baby can hang out with a black man and not be like, I don't know what I should do with a black man.
Right.
Why would he be like that? His grandpa's black.
Exactly. That is in and of itself is a special thing.
Yeah.
Because most white babies, they don't have that experience.
Right. That exposure.
Right.
So your baby is getting an experience very different
from
like 99.8% of white babies.
You know my baby all-star quarter black. Okay. All-star
No, but I love spending time with him, and he's like, Dr. Greg. I'm like, what?
He has manners.
Yeah, he's a good kid.
Well, yeah. But it's like, he's growing up in a certain way.
You know what I saw in Cuba, and I don't know if you guys would get this. My landlady was a white woman. Of course, like Latinos are like, also are on the color spectrum.
Yeah.
She was a white woman. Her neighbor was a black drunken man. He was an alcoholic man. She wasn't afraid of him. She wasn't like, oh my God, what's he gonna do? She was like, hey, my black neighbor, blah, blah, blah. And they chat and he comes around and blah, blah, blah. The thing is that they had a relationship that wasn't a negative relationship. And for me, I'd never seen that in my life. Like maybe if he'd been this upstanding, suit-wearing black man then, but he was actually an alcoholic. And she did not categorize him as dangerous. She didn't say that, oh, Maria can't hang out with that black man because it's a problem. She said, that's my neighbor. Like, it wasn't an issue. I had never seen that before. And that's why I say Cuba is one of my favorite places. I had never seen that before in my life.
Yeah. No,
you know what?
And what kind of system do they have in Cuba?
It was a dictator.
What kind of system do they have in Cuba?
Yeah,
do they have a T'Challa system? Or do they have a Killmonger system in Cuba? So what I'm saying that to say that what you saw was the product of political systematic being put in place. If that person was from Wakanda, if your neighbor was from Wakanda, she would have had a problem with her neighbor, because that's the way the people in Wakanda were trained to think. That the lowly, degenerate Africans are going... Remember homeboy that rode on the rhinos? He said that. We can't let those motherfuckers up in here and open our borders, because they're going to fuck up what we got going on here.
He's like, if you want me to go out there...
If you want to go out there...
Right.
And that's a certain type of mentality.
But he changed.
Yeah, because his wife was like, listen, motherfucker, you need to do what...
What did he change?
But he changed when he was exposed to Killmonger.
Yes. No, but he didn't change. He didn't change. He was willing. He always was willing. He said, if you want to go out there, and that's the part of Killmonger's plan that he signed onto, was going out and conquering and subjecting. That's a good point. Right. But it ain't like he was like, okay, I'm with you with bringing them back here.
No.
Right?
He was not. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, it's important, and I'm glad that you made that point, is that we... Black Americans or African Americans or black folks can't think that type of experience that you had is just a magically delicious experience. It is the result of 50 and 60 years of blood, sweat, and political education of the populace that teaches socialism to the people, and it doesn't happen magically. And that's why we here, when you ask what's to be done, we have to have a political education program. Cuba's your favorite place for a reason. For a reason. It's a very intentional reason. And if we want to replicate that, we have to be intentional too. It's not just going to magically drop down and occur. And that's why we have to critique this movie the way that we're critiquing it. That's why. Right? Because the winners in that movie don't represent the best of what we know is necessary in order to bring about not tripping off of a drunk black neighbor.
It actually reinforces.
It reinforces
business as usual. Right.
Businesses, status quo as usual. The CIA is all. Listen, I wrote down how many times in the film that, because Theo made the whack point, and yes, I said whack, Theo.
Here we go.
Theo made the whack point.
You know, Theo. Go ahead.
Listen, this is why his point is whack. Is that he made the whack point that, in Wakanda, the relationship between the Wakandans and the CIA was horizontal. It wasn't vertical, which is bullshit, right? The truth of the matter is that in that movie, they were in 3 times did the Wakandans say that the CIA was T'Challa's friend. Mm-hmm. Not just a political alignment, not just a, what do you call that, what the UN does, not just an alignment between nations, right? It was actually, he's my friend.
Right.
And that is the dangerous message in the movie, that the CIA, who undermines all of the African continent, is the friend of the king of Wakanda.
Well, listen, I want to say something, not totally addressing that, but I want to say 2 things in response to what you just said. Number 1, we're going to have Theo on soon. Number 2, as I texted you, if you and Theo want to debate, I would love.
So when I put up my Facebook page,
I would love to host that debate.
Because Theo came on my Facebook page, and I'm saying, you better not cut this shit out.
Oh,
you hear that,
James? He came on my page making a critique of my analysis of the movie. Then I said, you know what you should do then, if you want to make a critique, is let's do a Facebook Live
I saw
post.
That, right.
And then what he said was, no, I don't want to do a Facebook Live post. And the reason why he didn't want to do that is because he's putting his brand, he doesn't want to put his brand, he doesn't want to come out from underneath his brand where he's, Theo, the whatever. But listen, I'm willing to put I got a brand too. So you got to put your money. You don't come on my page making a critique, and then when I want to challenge you, you're like, no, I don't want to do that.
Well, you both are friends of ours. We've been all.
I love Theo. Listen, he's
together. Bread on my table.
Theo has texted me 3 times since I've been here. Yeah. We're meeting tomorrow.
It's all good.
The point is that if you have a point, you should be able to defend the point and be able to.
All I'm saying is, if it's gonna go down, I'm there for you.
So listen, I'm like Muhammad Ali, and he's like Frazier.
Oh shit!
I'm challenging him to come from underneath wherever he's hiding, and we will do a Facebook Live, and you take your ideas, I'll take my ideas, and
beauty,
and the winner takes all.
It's gonna be off color. It's gonna be off color. God.
But you can't be afraid to come from behind your brand because you're afraid of losing your belt.
So H-Soul talking about like Theo is afraid, and Theo is like, I ain't afraid.
But I'm not gonna do it.
No,
that's what he said. Oh no, I don't want. We're just texting. Let's just keep it here. And several people said, "Listen, you went on his page. He's challenged you to do a Facebook Live, but he doesn't want to do a Facebook Live."
Okay. Instead of, would you concede at all on the Facebook Live piece? Would you be willing to come to this basement and have this debate?
Listen, I'll say it like Dr. Seuss said it. I'll
racist,
challenge him here. I'll challenge him there. I'll challenge his ass anywhere.
I would like
to see
on a train.
In Rebecca's basement.
Whenever, wherever, whatever medium.
So now he's called out. That's funny.
That's an official call out. And I love Theo. I do. Let me say that.
I know you do.
I love Theo.
We've all been together.
He's my little brother. And
it's he called him little brother.
He's my little brother.
I want to go on record right now. I'm literally messaging Theo Wilson right now. To tell him you've been called out.
Oh, he already knows that.
No, but on my show. He's been on here. He's coming on too.
That's hilarious. But I think it's important.
I do too. And I do think it's important. And I'm down.
Yeah.
I'm down.
So I'm thinking.
Because, if you remember the Muhammad Ali movie?
Yeah.
Before Frazier and Muhammad Ali fought, they sat in a car with each other, and Muhammad Ali said, "I'm gonna whoop your ass," and Frazier said, "I'm gonna beat your ass."
That's how we do.
That's how we do. But it's love.
Right.
People don't know that Frazier helped take care of Muhammad Ali when he couldn't get any fights. That Frazier financially took care of Frazier. So Frazier took care of Muhammad Ali during those years. It's all love. But I am going to have to show them that there is a master. And then there's a student.
Well, we will see. We will see. And what I love, for me, this is my own personal. It's an HBCU thing. That's all. And I'm like, I know how folks. I know how folks get down and stuff. Yes. I'm like, you know what? Yeah. It can go down.
My wife is from Jackson State, so it's an HBC. Yeah.
I'm Tennessee State. You don't know.
I'm sorry I didn't go, you guys.
It's not.
I'm in condition.
Well, see, the thing is Hampton University is not really a black school anyway.
No, you didn't. Oh shit! I'm about to call up cousin Cheryl, and she's gonna have some words for.
See, people don't. That's what I'm saying. People don't know.
They say we're the real HU for a reason, right?
Oh, damn.
The real HU.
You went to Howard.
HU.
It's on.
So and then just in this house, my husband's father also went to Howard. Okay.
Enough said. What else? What are we talking about then? Listen, from here on out, you should never bring up the word Hampton University.
Oh, damn!
In this podcast, you are demeaning the legacy of your father.
See, this is
that's my father-in-law. My father's family. That's a whole other thing, and shit is about to pop off if you're trying to talk to that Henderson.
No, but see, that's a black thing.
West
that's a black thing.
Virginia.
That's a black.
Are we
thing.
going to eat?
Oh.
I think what?
So wait a minute, hold on. I'm gonna show you that this is a black thing. Watch this. What are we eating for dinner?
It's chicken.
Chicken.
Chicken. It's chicken. All right, we gotta go, y'all, because there's chicken up. So if I'm Killmonger, there's chicken upstairs. And,
listen though, for real. If you are a vegetarian, I did also make some rice and peas. Thank you very much.
I am a vegetarian when I'm not eating chicken.
All right. Outstanding. Okay. Outstanding, everyone.
All right, cool. Who hungry?